Hey everybody, this is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another edition of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. I hope all of you got to celebrate your Thanksgiving holiday with family and friends. You got to relax and kick back a little bit. We are back with a new episode today with Vice President and Regional Manager of our Southern Jersey Shore Point, Steve Booth, and we are going to touch upon the secondary home market along the shore points in Southern New Jersey. And that is always a relevant topic because we all know someone who has either bought a shore house, is looking for a shore house, or you yourself might be looking for a shore house. So this always pertains to all of us. And Steve brings a ton of knowledge. He's been licensed since 1984. He has been a sales associate, an office leader, a regional manager. He has served on the Ocean City Planning Board and is a past president of the Ocean City Board of Realtors. So we're going to lean on Steve's knowledge today, get right into the conversation with him, and we'll pick it up on the other side. So, Steve, it's a pleasure to finally have you on the podcast. And I know we had some logistical problems getting you on. Most of them had to do with me coughing uncontrollably for the past week, and that does not tend to make for a great listening experience for our listeners out there. But we finally have you on here, and I'm looking forward to touching upon the secondary home market down your way. So recently, I was in an annual realtor meeting in PA, and they had an economist on from the Philly Fed. And as a featured speaker talking about some of the headwinds that we're facing right now, he talked about the continued lack of inventory, inflation, interest rates putting a damper on the current state of things in the real estate market. So to start, I want to ask you about the current state of your market where you are, because number one, not all markets are the same. And number two, people buying down your way in the secondary market typically have cash to spend. So interest rates may or may not come into play. So starting off, what do you see where you are on the sales side right now in the Shore region?
So first off, before I get started, I just want to say thank you for having me, and I am happy that you're feeling better, and happy to answer whatever I can and shed some light on that. So let me address something that you just mentioned in there with respect to cash deals and so forth in the secondary market first. So the first thing I would tell you is, yes, I will tell you that the demographics for the secondary market, generally the buyers are a little bit more well-to-do and certainly a little bit more qualified on loans than some of the other primary markets. And there are a lot of cash deals, but I'll tell you that it's as much as there's cash deals, it also comes down to consumer confidence. And our market is very, very much affected by consumer confidence, by interest rates. It's a secondary home market, so I've told people before, nobody really, quote, needs a second home. It's a desire. It's something that people have wanted maybe for years or decades. And when they have the opportunity to do it, they do it. But they also need to feel confident that it's the time to do it. So as the economic markets, as the economic uncertainty or positivity, whichever you are in any given point, fluctuates back and forth, so does our market. And I would say more so than the primary market. That certainly does come into play.
Yeah. With that said, how do you feel about consumer confidence right now? I mean, what is are people ornery right now? How do you feel? How do you feel the market is right now?
Well, in that aspect, we are dealing with the same scenario that the primary market is, that people are not really yet accustomed to the 7-8%, 6-7-8% mortgages. And we do have the same issues with respect to the people who have mortgages down here at 2.5%, 3.5%, not putting their properties onto the market. So we are dealing with the same scenarios of the low inventory that the rest of the marketplaces are. But in terms of confidence, I think that the buyers do recognize that the prices have continued to appreciate here. So they're not in a situation where they're afraid of buying, but they are just more or less waiting, thinking that rates are going to come down. Dangerous to do because many times that's happened over the last years and years and years. We did see it for obviously in the recent time, but you wait for rates to come down and you find out that the price of the property went up more than offsetting that difference. So little bit of a game to play that really probably should not be done. And
just to expound on that point, we were talking right before we came on that Full disclosure, my wife and I and my mother actually were looking for a shore home. And for the reasons that you talked about is that the reason why I tend to want to look now is because I know although the rates are a little bit higher, as soon as those rates come down, you're going to see that feeding frenzy again and maybe another jump in appreciation, especially at the shore, where it seems like you blink your eye and homes have appreciated overnight. And so, I think what you say makes a lot of sense. So, to back that up, I wanted to ask you if you picked up a brand new client tomorrow, you yourself, looking at one of the shore points for a secondary home, how would you advise them in the current state of the market? And what expectations would you set with them before buying a home at the shore?
Well, first off, when you're buying a home at the shore, you're really buying it not necessarily for the home itself, but for the whole aspect of the shore. We've talked with people any number of times and talked about to our agents that what we sell is the beach, the boardwalk, fishing, boating, etc. That's what people are coming down here for. They want to come down with their families. They want to come down and experience what they had as kids. So that's really, really what we're selling, not necessarily the house or the unit if it's a condominium. Having said that, what I try to do with people is I have said, and this has worked out for years, look at the market as a whole in terms of what's available today. Find the best property that fits your needs in that market today and go after that property. Trying to time the market, trying to think something's better is going to come on, et cetera, usually doesn't work out. But what does work out is exactly that. If you buy the home that's the best property for you today on the market, even if you pay a little bit more than you want to, which almost everybody does, in the long run, it's worked out for almost everybody. And I would tell you, even in the going back 10, 15 years when there was a last downturn in the marketplace, even the people who bought at the height then have now more than surpassed what they paid. So depending on the timing on it, it generally works out. And obviously you get the benefits that you were looking for to begin with, which again is the beach, the boardwalk, et cetera, everything that the shore brings with it.
Well, I learned from experience. So now is the time where I'm going to throw my mother under the bus, because she perpetually looked for, we're going back into like the 90s, and every opportunity that she ever had to purchase a secondary home at the shore, she, for whatever reason, it was, timing wasn't right. The prices were too high. This or that wasn't correct. This, one of the places was a little on the smaller side. And I said, don't worry about it. I would always tell her, like, don't worry about it because it's all going to work out. If you hate your place down there, you can sell it in a couple of years and make some money on it. But she never did pull the trigger. And I think she learned her lesson. And I think she's in a large group that think the same way, right? And so how do you, just what you said there, is that the best course of action for getting people off of the fence? Because people are going to pay a premium at the shore typically. That is usually what it's going to take because they're highly desirable. Is that the case to be made to, the secondary investors down there, or the people looking for a shore home?
I don't know if that's specifically the case. I can tell you that, we sit in here on weekends and we go through the summer rental check-ins week after week after week. And there's a good percentage of those people checking in on Saturday that have said, I had the opportunity to buy this property 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I wish I had, I wish I had, I wish I had. And, we try to explain to people that everybody feels like it's too much money every time. Whether it's $500 or $500,000 too high, everybody thinks they're paying too much for it. It's the getting off of the just inertia to make the move. That's really what it takes. And people who paid, quote, too much money for it are happy they paid too much money for it. Maybe not the next week, but the next year or the year after that, or when they do go to sell. It has really worked out for most people. And that, again, that's just the financial side of it. The real benefit is the family memories, all the things that come along with it as well. And you talk to people who have owned at the shore and sold, there are very, very few people who will tell you it was a mistake. It's something that I really wish I never did. There are, on the other hand, numerous people, as I mentioned, who check in on Saturday saying, I wish I had, I wish I had, I wish I had.
We just got tired of renting. I mean, why, again, if you have the means to do it and you enjoy being where you are, like you said, it's all about the memories and just that feeling. I know for me, it's an escape. It's somewhere that I look forward to going every year. I miss the sea air when I'm not there. It's a special place to me. And I think obviously in the Philadelphia region, many people feel the same way. And
I would agree with you. I don't even think many people see it as a vacation. They see it as something that they grew up with, and it's just part of their life. They go to the shore in the summer, whether it's for a week, a month, or the season. It's just part of life. Their vacations may be somewhere else during other parts of the year, but we all go to the shore in the summer. So yeah, I would agree with you there.
100%. So, okay. So we talked about the sales side of things, but equally important to your market is, and especially for, secondary homes down the shore, is that many people tend to rent them out. So when it comes to the rental market, what do you foresee happening in 2024? Will rents stay strong? Are they going to ebb and flow a little bit? Are they going to weaken a little bit? Are things cooling off on the rental side?
No, I almost wish they were. And that's the other part of the sales side that you were just mentioned, having been a renter. It is getting much, much, much more difficult to find the rental property that you really want. And that goes back now into, I'll call it the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, that many people took their properties off the market, started using them in conjunction with the downturn in the rates. They refinanced them, brought their mortgages down to the 2s and 3s, and the inventory availability for summer rental homes has depleted dramatically. So what we've seen as a general rule is not only have the prices gone up and gone up dramatically over the last couple of years, but the time frame to book has been forced to be earlier and earlier. We would generally, forever, book our repeat rentals in the fall. This time of year, we would have had them done. As we go into January, the new tenants coming in, we would be booking them. But what's happened now is if you don't book during the summer when you leave, it's a good chance it's going to be booked out from underneath of you by the fall. That demand just continues to go, and the supply continues to be depleted. So I don't see that changing. We have seen some people who really, really, really dramatically increased prices at late last year and may not have gotten it. So while prices have gone up, we have tried to explain to landlords and homeowners, listen, I get it. There's not as much inventory. The prices have gone up. Everything, all the costs have gone up, but you can't go from 4,000 to 8,000. You can't go, you can go from 4,000 to 4,400. You can go from 5,000 to 55 maybe, but you can't do those type of jumps. So what we're seeing now is hopefully a little bit more of a controlled price increase, but I don't see a decrease coming because I just don't see the availability. The other side of that as well is you've seen the addition of the internet sites where just in general, vacation home rentals have become much more commonplace for people renting. They're not necessarily going to a hotel. They prefer the vacation home rental. So you throw all of that into the mix, and demand, supply, I don't see the prices coming down.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, actually, that was going to be my next question, because you see a lot of Airbnbs and VRBOs coming online in popular places like the shore. How has that impacted agents in the marketplace? How has it had a significant effect? Is it negligible? How do you see these third-party sites, these rental places come into play for your agents?
Well, I'll tell you what it's done is it's expanded the options, let's put it that way, for a tenant. And not necessarily with the number of properties, but there are some people now who will book shorter terms, which for the agencies, we've never really gotten involved in that. Our rentals, as you know, are generally 1-week rentals, Saturday to Saturday. But as you get into the internet sites, the Airbnbs, the Verbos, et cetera, they'll have shorter terms. So that by doing that, it's expanded the tenant pool as well. So the guy who couldn't come here for a full week now can come here for 3 days, 4 days, et cetera. So while you've seen, let's say, the competition from those sites online compared to our business, you've also seen more prospective tenants come on because they could do the shorter term stays. So it really hasn't affected the number of leases that we're doing. It hasn't affected the competitive pricing scenario, as I mentioned before. It's just been the expansion of the overall market that you've seen.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I love to go to the shore. I also tend to go to upstate New York a lot, and we tend to Airbnb or VRBO up there, and they're really cracking down on short-term rentals up there. And same with the Poconos. We know that they're really cracking down there. Obviously, to do it down the shore would very, very much kill the vacation market down. You don't see anything like that on the horizon down the shore, do you?
The crackdown you're talking about, I've seen it in the number of days. I'll give you an example. In Brigantine, for example, Brigantine just passed an ordinance where they now have a minimum, I believe it's a minimum 3-night stay. What they wanted to do was get away from one-night stays, more or less hotel B&Bs in residential zones. And you do have the issue of the second homeowner, the primary homeowner versus the Airbnb guy. You've got that going a little bit in certain areas, just like you have up in the Poconos and some other areas. But what we've seen is nobody's saying get rid of them. I've seen people say, let's control them and try and work a compromise where everybody wins. And that tends to be not necessarily a one-night stay, but shorter than a week, more than a night.
And I think that makes sense. I mean, I totally get that. Do you see down now, just from an anecdotal perspective, we like to go down in the off season. And I feel like when we do go down in the off season, the off season's kind of longer and longer. Do you feel like people are renting further and further into the season now? For example, we'll be going down next week for Christmas and the holiday parade. We like going down this time of year. It's not about going to the beach like a lot of people think it is. It's about the experience, right? So, do you see people hanging on longer now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that does go to the Airbnb Vrbo scenario where it's the shorter term stays, the long weekends, et cetera, that become available for people to come down to. Most of the communities have some sort of off-season schedule of events, whether it be car shows, musicians, et cetera. Most have some sort of scenario to try to extend that season into October, November. Cape May, as we talked about before, you start talking about Christmas in Cape May. So there's a number of people that come down in the off seasons. And normally the weather isn't too bad down here. We'll get snow every once in a while, but not to the degree that everybody else does. So it's definitely extended the season for some people. And we're seeing more and more people here any month of the year, not just the July and August.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because my father, for a good length of time, lived in Avalon. And I used to hate going down there in the wintertime because I felt like there was absolutely zero things to do in the off season. It was windy, it was cold, and now it's just a completely different animal, I feel like. And, I want to get back to just the sales side. And, typically we talk about the secondary market as being at the shore, very close to the beach. That's kind of how I think about it. You're blocks away from the beach potentially. But affordability is such an issue for many people looking on the island or beach blocks. How is the secondary market off the island or, close to the shore, but not necessarily in town? Summers Point is a place that comes to mind for me, right? So how are towns like Summers Point that are close to the beach, but, probably a short car ride away doing in this market? And are they something to be considered for those unable to afford the higher prices at certain shore points?
It's interesting you bring up Summers Point because that's initially what came to my mind as you were talking about it. And I'll get to Summers Point in a second, but it actually depends on the inland community. So using Summers Point as an example, Summers Point being the inland community off of the 9th Street Bridge coming into Ocean City, Upper Township being the inland community off of the 34th Street Bridge coming into Ocean City. Upper Township has fairly much remained, in terms of the single-family homes, a year-round community. There are some campgrounds, there's some manufactured home areas that are only open 6 months out of the year, and they've always catered to the summer community. But the primary home scenario had generally been in Upper Township and still generally is. But just a few miles north of it, when you're talking about Summers Point has become the option for people looking in Ocean City, but not necessarily wanting to spend the Ocean City median or average sale price. Summers Point, I talked with one of the tax guys over in Summers Point, and I believe it was about 10 years ago, they said about 15% of the tax bills went out of the community. Now it's over 50% go out of the community. Summers Point has become a second home community, and they've done a lot of work to do that, by the way. I mean, they've upgraded their Bay Avenue scenario where they wanted to have a historic area. Obviously, the bars, the nightlife, the restaurants, that all comes into the Summers Point area. And it really does make a nice community for a second home. Just over the bridge, if you're going to the beach, got a bayfront there as well if you're going to be boating. So different areas have been affected different ways, but Summers Point is probably the most impacted second home changeover community down here.
Yeah. Do you and you said obviously it's the most impacted. Do you feel like that's the anomaly, or do you see that trend happening in other places, say like a North Cape May or a Swayton or something like that, right outside of the main beach points?
I think depending on the access to the islands, I think yes, simply because of pricing. If the pricing isn't too much of a disparity, no. But if you're talking about places with average sale prices $1 million to $2 million and inland 500, 400, 600, without a doubt, people are looking at that as an option to purchase and still get the benefits of being at the shore.
It makes total sense. So moving forward and using our crystal ball here a little bit, what is the future for the shore? I mean, is it wash, rinse, repeat? Like, it's just the same old tried and true over and over again? Or will we see some insane things happening with price, particularly in places like Avalon, Stone Harbor, Cape May, Ocean City, to name a few? Is there any point in the foreseeable future that you see where there could be a bigger market correction or backlash from buyers that don't want to pay these kinds of prices anymore? Or could issues with weather, particularly, flooding issues, bigger storms, et cetera, affect the value of these homes moving forward? Is there anything in your mind that could slow the strong growth of the traditional shore homes investment value?
I think the investment value will remain, just simply because it's the same story as real estate. They're not making any more of it, and obviously Jersey Shore real estate, they're not making any more of that. I do think you have to look at the last 3, 4, 5 years and consider that appreciation rate a huge anomaly. And if you look over time, we're not appreciating to those degrees. That's the COVID scenario. That's the rates. That's everything coming together at once to push those numbers the way they had. But I think you can fairly much assume that you will continue to see an appreciation rate similar to what you saw, say, for the 10 years before that. I just don't see that changing. Now, that something out of the blue happens, and I'll give you an example. Sandy. When Sandy came through, we had 1 year. It was a year of getting back on our feet, more or less, and it was raising some properties, number one, raising in terms of increasing the height, not leveling them, leveling some others, yeah. And just getting the properties back in shape. But a year later, we started the upward trend again on the appreciation. So it is something, again, where we talked about earlier, that people from the surrounding area, not being anywhere from an hour and a half, 2 hours away and inland, they're going to come to the shore. They're going to come to the shore. And you think about people, everybody has always wanted to have a place at the shore, whether their family had it or not. If their family ends up selling the place for whatever reason, the people who came down to visit want a place at the shore. So I don't see that changing. I don't see that changing at all. Now, the other thing I'll go back to is if there was a huge economic downturn across the country, yeah, we get affected. And I would argue we get affected before most people, because it just seems like when that happens, people who are looking at the second home, who we said before don't need it, well, they put their hands back in their pockets and they're not reaching out and spending the money for it. So, a really, really strong recession, we're going to be affected by it. But over the long term, you'll be fine. And I would consider it just goes back to a sense of normalcy. We've already seen a sense of normalcy in terms of the seasonality. Again, over COVID, we were selling, didn't matter what month of the year it was. We just went on 12 months continuous sales. Historically, it's been spring and fall as our best months in terms of sales. Summer, we're servicing the people who are down here, and winter, it slows down. It's definitely slowed down this time of year from last year and the year before. So we're back to more or less the seasonality that we saw before, but that's normal. And that, I don't want to call it the new normal. It's just normal. We're back to normal, and that to me is a healthy financial environment.
I agree with you 100%. We're seeing the same thing here. It can be uneven where we are. For instance, I just put in an offer on a higher end property, or what would be considered a higher end property up here. There was 6 offers on it. I was shocked. Having said that, I showed a property that was half the price, nice house, a couple weeks prior, and there was no offers on it. So. Right. I mean, who knows? I feel like some of the stuff is very uneven right now, but it does tend to mirror, it sounds like, what's going on. And actually, the person that I referenced earlier from the Philly Fed talked about that really it's the same nationwide. It's the same problems, the same, lack of inventory, interest rates, all that stuff driving the market right now. So, okay. So I wanted to end today because this is a very serious podcast, and I have to ask some really hard-hitting questions to you to end this podcast. What would you say is the over-under on how many hermit crabs you have purchased in your lifetime from Hoy's Five and Dime? And is Manco and Manco Pizza overrated or underrated?
Well, first off, I'm going to tell you, I have never purchased a hermit crab in my life. I'll go visit them on the boardwalk if I want to see them. I have never purchased a hermit crab in my life. And to me, Manco and Manco is still Mac and Manco, by the way. It just, I can't get away from it. I
debated on whether to reference the Mac and Manco because I can't get past it either, but.
I can't move to the Manco and Manco. I can't say it's overrated. I can say the lines are a little crazy to get it. But once you got it, I enjoy it. I enjoy a Mac and Manco pizza as much as anybody. And again, frankly, that's exactly what we're talking about when we say what people want at the shore. It's the Mac and Manco pizza. It's the Johnson's popcorn. It's all the shore communities things that people are used to seeing. It's the Lobster House. It's all the different things that people associate with the shore, and that's what brings them back.
I was going to ask you how many pairs of paper slippers you have from the Chatterbox, but I didn't know if that would come into play for you or not.
So you threw the Chatterbox at me, so I got to let you know this, and I know you don't know this. My grandmother opened the Chatterbox.
Are you serious?
Yeah, my grandmother was the original owner of the Chatterbox.
Oh my goodness!
So, yeah, I grew up there until I was about 10 years old, going back there making sundaes behind the counter and all that stuff.
Oh man, that's awesome!
Chatterbox near and dear to my heart from growing up.
I'll tell you, as a teenager and early 20s, I had a buddy who would rent in Ocean City every year, and the Chatterbox was our place to be for a very long time. So that is a very cool story. I love that. So did you grow up on the island, Steve? Or
I did.
Did you?
I did.
Okay. All right. I knew you've been there for a very long time, but I didn't know that you actually grew up there.
I did. It's a phenomenal place to grow up. I will tell you that. It's just, just like everybody else, you've got your group of friends that come down or that are here year round, but you also have people that come down all summer long, and you get to know people from different areas. We all worked at places in the summer, be it the Chatterbox, be it the other, whether lifeguards, whatever. It's a phenomenal place to live year round, even though people think it's a little bit slow in the winter. It's great.
So last question I'm going to ask you then, right. Having grown up there, you've been there, pretty much all your life. Do you still go to the beach a lot?
Not as much as I used to.
I get that answer all the time from people who live there. They don't go to the beach that much.
Well, honestly, in this business, since I've been in it, at least since I've been managing, let's put it that way. I'm here generally on Saturdays. We're handling summer check-ins, things like that. So during the summer, as I mentioned, is a really, really strong servicing time period for us. So I don't see a whole lot of time to go to the beach during the summer. And frankly, I enjoy the beach in September and June and October when everybody else isn't around anyhow. That's the best time to come down and be at the beach.
I can't agree with you more, and that makes perfect sense. Well, Steve, thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate the information and the knowledge about the short points, and I'm glad that we could finally make this happen. And once again, thank you for bearing with me and my voice as we make this podcast happen.
Voice was great, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Jason.
All right, Steve. Thank you. I hope to see you face to face at some point soon. I actually popped into your office a few weeks back, but I think you were either on a call or something happened. I didn't want to disturb you. So
that was the day I told the people in the front, if Jason Ostrowski comes in, I'm not here.
You know what's funny? That seems to happen an awful lot to me wherever I go. So, right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and hope to talk to you soon.
Anytime. Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me.
That was the conversation with Steve Booth this week. Great guy to talk to about the short points. Here are a few takeaways that I had in my conversation with Steve. Number one, I found it interesting when Steve said in our conversation that often the shore could be kind of a bellwether for the rest of the region, meaning that when it comes to the secondary home market, that usually is the first place where people pull back if they're feeling the pinch economically. The good news is that the market down the shore still seems to be very strong, especially for the secondary market, even though there is some seasonality that is coming back into play. Could be a good thing, because we all know that breakneck pace can't last forever, and a little seasonality is actually a good thing, whether it's down the shore or up in PA or in Delaware or in North New Jersey. It just means that the market is normalizing. Number two, for those clients of yours that have maybe purchased a shore home, or maybe you are thinking of purchasing a shore home, coinciding with your purchase, typically you are going to be renting that property out, and Steve says that rents continue to stay strong. In fact, people are booking them earlier in the season. They are booking them for very good rates and are increasing them year over year. So if you do have clients that are thinking about a secondary home, the market is still renting very strong. Last but not least, if you have a client that is looking for a home in the secondary market down at the Jersey Shore points, but somehow they think they're going to time the market absolutely perfectly to get the perfect deal on a home, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, Steve says. If you want a shore house, focus on what your needs are and then look for that home, because in the end, what is the goal? It's to be at the shore, at the beach, enjoying spending time with your friends, your family, and just being in that environment. That's where the value comes in. So yes, are you going to pay a premium to be down there? Most likely, but as most people will tell you that bought a secondary home, they don't regret it for 1 minute. Well, that's it for this week's episode. We will be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest, and as always, if you want to hear something that we haven't covered yet, please reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to the podcast or left us a review yet, please do so. It helps us to reach more people. Once again, this is Jason Ostrowski saying stay safe out there, stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.